Okay, okay,
We're good to go.
okay. Welcome, Barbara, and everyone who has joined this morning. As Sariana said, my name is Rebecca. I am a volunteer community educator at the wonderful Alzheimer's Association. I have been volunteering with them. I believe I'm going on my 7th year now. And I just want to give you a little bit of what brought me to the organization, which is my personal connection to the disease. When my younger sister, my only sister, Natalie, we were very, very close. When she was in her late 40s, I think like 48, 49, she began having what we call warning signs or symptoms or red flags of dementia. Um, Very definite changes in her memory, her thinking, and her behavior, and even her personality that were very disturbing to our family. And when she was 52, she was officially diagnosed with younger onset Alzheimer's disease, and she passed away 6 years ago at age 57. So, in addition to giving you research based strategies and tips for having these very difficult conversations, I'm also going to be sharing personal examples from what I went through with my sister when we were concerned about whether or not she had dementia. And then, in addition, 3 years ago, my mom was diagnosed with dementia as well. So, I am going to share personal stories and ideas that have worked, some that haven't worked with my own family. So without further ado, let's get started with our first slide. These are some of the most difficult conversations that people that have reported when they are concerned about somebody in their family or a close friend, when they're concerned about some memory issues in the very beginning. How do I get them to go to the doctor? That's a really difficult conversation. And there's a lot of, for many people, there's a reluctance around doing that. This is the biggest one, deciding when it is necessary to stop driving. And driving is attached to people's independence, and it's very, very difficult to get them to realize that it's time to stop. It's not easy. And then, of course, making those legal and financial plans to cover the future care needs of a person when that is, in fact, the diagnosis. So these are the goals for today. So when we're finished with today's training, hopefully you'll be able to do all these things. Number one, provide tips on how to break the ice, on how to have those very difficult conversations, the most common ones, which is the ones that we just said about going to the doctor, driving, and making those legal plans. Hopefully you'll be able to plan ahead, and we're going to talk a lot about at the very end about how to build a care team that communicates well with each other. Then you'll have the opportunity to hear from people who are dealing with similar issues. So there, in addition to my own personal stories, you're going to hear some from experts in the field, but also you're going to hear from people that have been experiencing this themselves with talking to somebody in the early stages or somebody who they were concerned about might have memory issues. And at the very end, I'm going to connect you with some wonderful and helpful resources through the Alzheimer's Association that I think you will find very beneficial. These are some typical barriers to having these very difficult conversations. So on the left, you might be thinking, or a person who's worried about somebody, they might not have the conversation because they might think, oh, well, you know, my sister or my aunt or my mom's best friend lives close by and she or he can help out. Or they might be thinking, my mom or my dad or my sibling or my aunt has always been fiercely independent. And if I step in, she or he will be offended if I do. So I'm not going to say anything. Or, you know, we're just starting to notice some changes. We're not even sure there is even a problem. And that's a typical one that keeps people from having the conversation. And then on the flip side, the person who is actually experiencing the early stages or some memory glitches might be saying, oh, you're busy with your own life, or I'm fine, don't worry about me. And that's exactly what we went through with my mom. She didn't want to have the conversation, didn't want me to talk to her about it. She's like, I'm fine, don't worry. Or this is another one I had with my mom that was pretty ongoing. Wait until you're my age. Things are harder than they used to be. She would always say to me, you're younger than me. I'm getting old. You'll see what happens when you get old. So very, very defensive whenever I brought anything up. So these are just some typical barriers that can keep people on both sides from having that very difficult conversation. And these are common. So let's go through some tips about having that successful conversation. But I do want to stop here and ask either Sariana or Han if you can hear me, just to make sure I'm not talking to air.
I can hear you, Rebecca.
Yay. Okay. So successful conversations. Sooner is better than later. Don't wait for a crisis to happen before you have that really important conversation with somebody. Don't wait for a car accident to happen. If you see, we're going to talk about this more in depth, but if you're getting a sense that their driving's not what it used to be, need to have the conversation, need to get involved. We're going to talk about developing a plan using finesse. And that's going to look different for everybody because everybody with this diagnosis is going to present very, very differently. And every family is different and every relationship is different. So the plan that you develop is going to look very different from one person to another. Take notes about the changes you see. This one is not necessarily to share with the person that has dementia or the person that you're worried about, because they could start getting defensive. But when it's time to go to the doctor and you go with them, or the medical team is asking you questions, you can be very, very specific about the changes that you see. So for my sister, Natalie, I also wanted to say that she was a single mom, and my nephew was 12 when she was diagnosed, and when she first started having memory glitches, was even younger than that. And I was her person. So rather than explaining to the doctor when they would ask me, what changes do you see? Rather than saying, she's just not the same lately, or she just seems like she's in a fog, or she seems to be forgetful. She's always forgetting her keys. I can be much more specific, and I can say, she can't tell time. She couldn't make me a cup of tea like she's always done before. She always made me tea in the morning and it was perfect. And then she's starting to make me tea with lukewarm water with half the glass filled and the tea bag put in. I noticed that the other day she put her shoes on the wrong feet and didn't notice. She was taking my nephew to his friend's house, when he was in middle school, and she'd been taking him there since third grade, and she forgot how. She called me crying. I couldn't remember how to get there. So the more specific you can be, the better. And if you take notes, that can get you a really accurate diagnosis really quickly. I really like this strategy, practice in advance, because practice makes perfect. You can practice with somebody else. So when I was talking to my mom, both my mom and my sister, I practiced with my daughter. I sort of had a script and I said, this is what I'm going to say. And my daughter would say, that's really great, Mom, but you forgot about this, or that's really great, but I wouldn't stress this too much because, Grandma or Auntie Natalie, they're not going to like that part. So practice in advance and get somebody's feedback before you talk to them about it. That can be a really nice strategy. And it also will make you more confident, because it can be very, very stressful to think, okay, I'm going to talk to the person I love or the person I care about, or even a friend right now. How do I do that? How are they going to accept what I'm saying? So really, really good strategy to practice in advance. Talk when you're both relaxed and comfortable. And again, this is going to look very, very different for every person and every relationship. So with Natalie, my sister, I would always bring up conversations with her in the evening when we would have a cup of tea, sitting on the couch together, watching a television program that she liked. With my mom, she was always comfortable being out and about, and she loved to go out for lunch. So always when we were out at her favorite restaurant, calmly, relaxed, I would bring it up with her then. So everybody's different. We're going to talk about conversations about going to the doctor. This is really hard for so many people. And here's some of the barriers. Fear. What is going on with me? Anger. I know that something's going on with me and I'm really mad about it and I don't want to find out what it is. So fear, anger, denial. And then there is a huge stigma that goes along with the words Alzheimer's and dementia. I know we'll talk about this later, but I'm just going to mention it now, that the stigma is so huge that even when Natalie got the diagnosis, we never used the D word and we never used the A word. We never said dementia or Alzheimer's. What worked for her was using the word memory problems. Yeah, you've got those memory problems. And with my mom, she doesn't like the word dementia either. For her, it's didn't like memory problems either. For her, it was like, yeah, the stuff that happens when you get old. So there is definitely a stigma. And all those three things can be a barrier to people getting a really, really good, accurate diagnosis early on, getting those checkups to see if in fact they do have the disease and then how quickly it's progressing, and they're getting medical help because there are medications, not to slow down the disease, there are medications that can help with some of the symptoms. So these are the barriers and these are very, very common. So we're going to hear from Donna, and Donna's going to talk about the importance of getting help.
I think you have to be honest. I think that's the important thing with it. To get a loved one to the doctor, I think you just need to be candid and honest of what are you trying to do. We're trying to understand what we're up against. It's just so important to do that, because you can't battle something that you don't know what you're battling. Again, it may not have been Alzheimer's, it could have been depression, it could have been so many other things. And guess what? There's other things you can do to take care of those issues as well. But that's what you need to be able to do. You can't ignore something. It's not going to go away.
You can't ignore something that's not going to go away. I want to talk about a couple things Donna just said, but I want to stop and ask Sariana. Han, I think you're not there anymore, but Sariana, were you able to hear the video? How was the volume?
I was able to hear the video, so great.
Yeah,
I think it's good to go.
Great. Did anybody else log on?
We have two more people who
Mhm.
joined us, Jane, and then somebody, the patron upstairs is on as my name because that was our workaround. So I'm not sure of their name. So yeah, I think continuing on with the presentation at this point might be the best way, and then
Oh, perfect. This is perfect.
okay, great. All right.
Okay,
And then we can yeah, okay,
thanks,
thank you.
Ariana. And I want to talk about a couple things. A really important thing Donna said is, well, the last thing she said was it's not going to go away. I mean, this is something that we really need to address, of course, but also she said it might not be dementia. It might not be a diagnosis like that. There are other reasons why people might be experiencing memory issues or might be acting in ways that are different from what you've known them to be. So it could be, as she mentioned, stress or depression can lead to some memory glitches and difficulties with problem solving and thinking. It could be an interaction with the new medication that they're taking. It could be a thyroid issue, something medical that isn't dementia or Alzheimer's. So really, really important to talk to them and try to get help, get them to see a medical professional really, really early on. Okay. So here's some tips. And I also want to say something before we go through these. These are tips that work for many people, but they don't work for everybody. Remember, every person's different. Every relationship is different. So it's going to be, so what I would do if I were you is look at all these, think about them. And you might think, all of those might work for me. I'm going to try all these. Or you might think, you know what? 3 of those aren't going to work, but I might try these 2, or I might try 1. So the idea is that these are just tips. These are strategies that work for many people, and pick and choose the ones that you think might work for you. Okay, so the first one is use words that are most comfortable for the person. So those of you that came late, I just want to tell you that my sister Natalie was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at age 52, and my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 3 years ago, and she's in her 80s. So use words that are most comfortable. So for example, Natalie did not like I said she didn't like the word Alzheimer or dementia, which we didn't use. She also didn't like the word neurologist. It would cause her stress, and she just would say, I'm not going to a neurologist. So I would use the first name of her doctor, which was Mary. And I would just say, we're going I wouldn't even say Dr. Mary. I would just say, we're going to Mary today. And that was really helpful for her. Now, my mom didn't mind going to the doctor, and I would just say, we're going to Dr. Lang today. And she said, okay, that's great. So depending upon the specific preferences of the person experiencing these issues, use words that are most comfortable. And I also talked to you earlier about, if Alzheimer's and dementia are too stressful and too overwhelming and there's too much stigma, don't use those words. Find words that are more helpful and understandable for that person. So Medicare has a free annual wellness visit. This has been going on since 2011. And in the wellness visit, it also includes a cognitive evaluation. So if you have questions about that, jot it down. We can talk about that at the end. Pair an enjoyable outing with the doctor visit. If the person that, if your family member, the person you're concerned about, or if somebody you're caring for, a loved one, doesn't mind going to the doctor and doesn't have an issue, that's great. But with Natalie, who we had a real problem with going to the doctor, never wanted to go, we did going to see Mary instead of the doctor, didn't use the word neurologist, didn't use Alzheimer's or dementia, but it was still a challenge to get her to go. So we always paired it with, Nat, after we go see Mary, we would go to her favorite restaurant, which was called Ruby's, around the corner from the doctor. We're going to Ruby's, and we are going to get her favorite food. And afterwards, we always stopped at Starbucks and got her favorite coffee. So always pairing it with something that's enjoyable for them if it's an issue. That could be really, really helpful. Then you're not stressing so much on going to the doctor. It can be, yeah, we're going to see the Mary, but then remember, we're going to Ruby's or wherever it is that they like to go. Invite family members to communicate their concerns and questions to the doctor. This is really important, especially if there's family members that are seeing different things than you're seeing. So bring other people in. What are you noticing? This is what I'm noticing, and really make sure that you have all that in place when you go. If your loved one or the person you're concerned about is still reluctant to go to the doctor, you can use a strategy that has worked for many people and has worked wonders for me. And it's always in my toolkit, which is use a therapeutic fib. Some people call it a loving lie. So you might say, you know what, Nat, my sister Natalie, Nat, your prescriptions are running out. Can you believe you have to go in for a visit for them to renew your prescription? Or for my mom, you have a deductible on your insurance and we've got to get in to see the doctor before it runs out. Or you know what? I heard that there's some really good vitamins out there that might be helpful, and the doctor wants us to come in and check it out before he or she prescribes some vitamins for you. So whatever you can think of that will get your loved one or the person you're caring for to the doctor is what's the most important thing. So those are some strategies. If you guys can think of other strategies that you have used that worked, jot them down. We can talk about them and share them at the end. This is the biggest challenge, conversations to have about when to stop driving. If you have noticed accidents, traffic tickets, scrapes on the car that you didn't see before, or mistakes while driving, it is time to have this conversation. Remember, in the very beginning, for those of you that came late, we talked about better to have the conversation sooner than later before a crisis happens. And this is referring specifically to driving and driving accidents. So with Natalie, I saw the last two. She had kind of a narrow garage and she was always able to pull her car into the garage. And then we started seeing scrapes on the side. So we did think that she was scraping the side of the garage when she went in, and she was never doing that before. And then I would be driving with her and she would start veering into the other lane without looking. So those, of course, were incredibly concerning. We are going to hear from Chris, and Chris's dad has dementia, and he's going to talk to us about what that was like having that conversation with his dad.
There's no exact answer on this is when you stop driving. You could tell when coming up to an intersection, as an example, the ability to understand what's going on around you was starting to deteriorate a little bit. Being on the highway with cars on both sides becomes a little bit more difficult. And first and foremost, the safety of everybody in the car, as well as other drivers on the road. You think about that, and you want to make sure you're not putting anybody in danger. But then the difficult part is telling your dad, who you love, and you know he loves driving, and he's used to it, that he can no longer do that. But then even then, taking the keys away full time was very difficult. The doctor was very helpful in just saying, medically, you can't do this anymore. But my mother had the hardest time with this because she knew how much this was going to hurt him as well. And this is one of the first things that we had to deal with as a family when it came to telling my dad that he had to stop doing something because of this disease. That meant a lot to him.
Exactly. It's really hard. So let's talk about some strategies that can help. Always, of course, we talked about this earlier, plan ahead before an accident occurs. So as soon as you notice any differences in driving, and if you're not driving with the person and you're concerned about their memory problems, or if they have a diagnosis and it's early on, ask other people, have you noticed any issues with driving? Really plan ahead before something, before an accident or something happens. Express your concern about the specific changes you notice. They will probably get defensive, but maybe not. So with Natalie, I just told her, I said, Nat, I'm seeing some scrapes on the side of the car. She'll say, yeah, I don't know why that's happening. I scraped the garage when I got in. Some people with dementia or Alzheimer's might have difficulty with their peripheral vision. So they're not seeing as well on the sides as they used to, or they might have difficulty with depth perception or color contrast. So when Natalie was veering over to the other side, I'm pretty sure it's because she didn't notice the white line there. So this can be a typical concerning issue. But for many people, it does help to tell them about the specific changes that you saw. Another tip might be appeal to the person's sense of responsibility and concern for others. Nobody wants to hurt anybody. Now with Natalie, she had 3 dogs and a cat, very into animals. And what worked for her is I would say, Nat, I'm really worried that you might hit a squirrel or a raccoon or, oh my God forbid, a cat or a dog on the road. We really want to make sure that no animal gets hurt or that you don't hit another car and hurt somebody. And sometimes that can help people to realize it's time to stop driving. We're going to hear from Sheila, and she, just like Chris, was dealing with her dad driving, and she's going to talk to us about that.
Some tips on having the conversation is pointing out, especially for my father, the potential danger to others that it may cause if he's behind the wheel. And just talking about it from the standpoint that this is not only the best thing for you, but this is also the best thing for others around you. And these are some of the alternatives, making sure that this is what's going to happen, having a plan. If mom can't take you, then Uncle Thomas or some, will be here to take you, and we will make sure that you're getting out of the house and that you're doing some things. So, presenting the bad news, but then also presenting the plan. And for my father, that's really, really important to have a plan.
Yeah, I mean, Sheila brings up such a great point. Rather than, that's it, you're not driving, I really need to take the keys away. I mean, think about it. I mean, imagine if someone said that to you. It's really important with somebody who is diagnosed with this disease to put yourself in their shoes and think about what it must be like for them, especially people that associate driving with independence, as many people do. So, which moves us on to the next tip, which is offer alternative plans for transportation. So with Natalie, I mean, she had a son that had to be picked up from school and taken to soccer practice, and I would help her a lot, but I couldn't do it all the time. So we were lucky enough to be able to hire somebody to drive her. And we'll talk about this at the end when we talk about a care plan. But I had some of her friends and my aunt, when they were available, they could take her they could pick up Erin, they could take her grocery shopping. So really important to have an alternative plan for transportation. And the last tip is an important one. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes you can incorporate the advice of an esteemed professional and have empathy. So for my mom, I would say to her, Mom, you know how much I love you. We all love you. I love you. Your grandchildren love you. Joe, my husband, loves you. Would name all the people that love her. And we don't want you to get hurt or get in an accident. And I know you don't want to hurt anybody else. It's really important now to put the keys aside and have other people take you to where you need to go. And still, no, I'm fine. I'm just getting old. You'll see when you get old, the same thing will happen. She used to say this all the time. Joe was all crazy. I'm a really good driver. And she wasn't. So we went to see Dr. Lang, and I told him ahead of time what the issue was, and I'll never forget it. He sat with her and he took her hand. My mom's first name is Leah. And he said, Leah, do you think your family loves you? Yes, of course they love me. They don't want you to get in an accident. And they want you to be safe, and they want everyone else to be safe. And I'm concerned about your driving. I have heard from your family that this and this and this has been happening. And also he said, when people do get older, they lose their ability to drive like they used to. They have differences in their judgment and they're planning ahead. And as your doctor, and I've been your doctor for a long time, I am telling you now, it's time to stop driving. And I couldn't believe it. She said, okay. So for my mom, she wouldn't listen to her family, but she listened to the professional. So again, everybody's different. What works for one person might not work for another. And it's up to you as the person who's having these conversations to figure out the best strategy to use to get them to stop driving. Oh, you can also use the therapeutic fib like you did for the doctor. You can say, oh, the car's in the shop. I don't know how long it's going to be in the shop for, but don't worry, I've got so-and-so that's going to take you to the grocery store. I'm going to help you out with doing these errands you need to do, or I'm going to take you to wherever it is they need to go, their doctor appointment, to a meeting, to church, to synagogue, wherever it is it's important for them to go. So you can do your therapeutic fib in addition to planning for an alternative method of transportation. So now we're going to hear from Wendy, and I love this video. She's going to talk about how important it is to use empathy, to be respectful, and like I just said earlier, to really think about what the world must look like and what it feels like for somebody that's going through this.
Talking to somebody about stopping driving, I think it's most important to understand that that is tied to someone's independence more than most things. And so by saying you can't do this anymore is like telling the person, it's like ripping away their independence. And that doesn't feel good for anybody. I know that I've always tried to put myself in that situation. what would I think if someone was saying this to me? You don't get to do this anymore. And how would I feel? And how would I want somebody to talk to me about this? And so if you try to put, I think sometimes too many people try to approach it as, very punitive. And I'm doing what's right for you. So why, why don't you understand, without really turning the tables and putting themselves in that position, understanding, how helpless that feels to take those things away. It's important to be thoughtful about what that experience is like for the individual.
Exactly. It's important to be thoughtful about what that experience is like for the person. Can't stress that enough. Okay, we talked about driving. We're going to move on to legal and financial planning. And we're back to Chris again. And he's going to share with us how his family was dealing with those really high financial costs that can occur when somebody is diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia.
Financially, this disease will increase the cost of living. It's just a fact. So planning for those extra costs is that much more important than what you were planning for before. And so you have to review everything that's in place, see what changes needed to be made, both legally and financially, and you have to monitor that going forward afterwards too.
Okay, let's get into that. Legal and financial planning. Here's what you might feel. I felt all of these things with my mom and my dad. My dad had Parkinson's disease, and in the last year of his Parkinson's disease, he had dementia, which is typical of people that do have the disease. So I have had this experience with all three of my family members, unfortunately, all three different dementias, and they're all very different people. And I experienced had very different relationships with all three. And this is how I felt with my dad. Not so much my mom, because she was happy to let me take over the financial planning, but my dad wasn't. And here's what I felt, and you might feel as well. You're reluctant to talk about money or finances. You're feeling uncomfortable with it, especially if it's a parent and you have not had a relationship with your parent where you talk about money, which was my relationship with my parents. It might feel intrusive and it might feel disrespectful, but you need to talk about it. This is again one of my favorite videos. I just love how Julie explains to her friends how important it is to have financial discussions with their parents or their loved one when they get this diagnosis.
Here's what I've come to after all of this. That it's the most loving and kind thing you can do for them is to be honest with them and say, this is like a really scary thing. And I feel a lot of discomfort bringing this up to you, but I tell them, if you're going to be the one who's going to take them on this journey, then you have to tell them, I'm going to be here on this journey with you. And there are things that we have to do to get this in place. We're going to go on this journey together. I've told you I'm going to be here with you till the end. So let's get this ready. It's like we're going to go on an ocean ship. We've got to get things packed up. We've got to figure out what we're taking with us. We got to get ready. And the things that we have to get ready, we have to make sure that we know which doctors you're going to be using. I need to get this signed, okay? So that if you go in there and they have to do surgery, for example, I got to have this durable power of attorney for health care for you. I have to have this worked out, okay? Now, if for some reason, okay, you need to go to rehab after something, I have to have these documents here, the financial stuff, so I can get these things taken care of for you while this is going on. I don't want to have anything get in the way of us being able to progress and keep doing this. I said, it seems hard because it's hard in our heads. Everybody's read about people who've stolen from elderly people, who've done these horrible things. But if you're the person who's approaching this with loving kindness and compassion, and you're willing to take this person on this journey, you're not doing a bad thing. You're doing the right thing by talking to them about it. And you approach it from the standpoint of, I'm here for you. I'm doing this for you. We're going to do this together. And I'm going to help you through this. And these are the tools that I need to make sure that we can do this.
I love that video, like I said, and I wish that I had listened to this video before I tried to deal with financial issues with my parents. It would have been very helpful. So thank you, Julie, for that. Okay, let's talk about some tips to help with financial planning, the conversation. Just like Julie just said, begin by explaining that you're in this together. So rather than, excuse me, I think that if you explain that you're in this together, it's not so much, I've got to do this for you. We're going to do it. This is, I have to help you. We're doing this together. We love each other. We're a family. We care about each other. And this is something we're going to do together. We're in it together. Start initially by asking questions about finances and gathering some documents, and not all at once. You don't want them to feel overwhelmed and bombarded. Tell me where everything is. Where's your checkbook? Where's your file? Tell me where you keep this. Tell me where you keep that. Just like maybe, can I just look at your checkbook and show me where your files are? Just like really gently, really calmly and respectfully. Just start by asking a few questions. Try not to be overwhelming. You can explain that these are standard plans that need to be made as we get older. So you exactly what it says, rather than rather than you have a memory problem and I'm really worried about what's going to happen to the future and I need to see all your financial stuff now. I've got to get this in order. You can change, just shift the tone, shift the focus. Yes, everybody ages. We need to make sure that everything's in place. Everybody does this. This is something we all do, and we just need to get all the financial stuff in order. Definitely break the conversation into parts and try different times in different locations. So again, we don't want to overwhelm the person. So just start off slow. Do it maybe, one day just start asking a few questions. And then another day or a couple days later, you can try doing it at a different time and increasing the time that you're talking about it. The point here is rather than thinking, I've got to get this all together all at once. Think about trying different times, different places, and really important not to overwhelm and stress the person out. And you don't want to stress yourself out either, with all the legal and financial stuff that's going on. This is what I did. Not everybody can do this, but you can, if you can, involve other people as needed. So my cousin Mark is a legal planning attorney, actually, fortunately for us, a financial planner and an attorney. And we pulled him in and he helped us out with my parents' financial plans. If you can hire somebody to come in and help out with finances. If you have a friend that knows this stuff and can volunteer their time a little bit, it's a really nice way if you're like me and you're not skilled in legal and financial planning, to get somebody else involved can reduce everybody's stress. The last point, last but definitely not least, is developing a care team. Nobody can do this on their own. This journey that some of you are going to be on is a long, very intense journey, and doing it alone can cause a lot of stress, aggravation, heartbreak, confusion. And if you have a care team in place starting early on, it can be such a wonderful addition to how you get through this disease and get through this journey. So most people first start out with the family. So the family is the person that notices the changes, who is going to strategize to get your loved one or the person you're caring about to the doctor, to get medications, to get an accurate diagnosis, to get them to stop driving, to put the legal issues in place. It all starts with typically the family, and that might not be for everybody, but for most people, it's the family. The next step is a medical team. And usually in the very, very beginning, when you're noticing changes or you have an early diagnosis and you want to start planning, it's the primary care physician. That's usually the first person that would be on your medical team, but it can be many people. So for Natalie, we had a nurse, we had the doctor, primary care, we had a neurologist, we had a social worker. Those are the people that we had on our medical team. And that could look different for everybody. Some people have a gerontologist. People have a variety of medical specialists on their team. If there's physical issues, you can add that to their team. Some people have an OT or a PT on their team. So the next layer is your medical team. I really use this for Natalie, not so much my mom, but for Natalie, because remember, she was in her late 40s, early 50s when she started having these warning signs, as we call them, and then 52 when she was diagnosed. And she had many, many friends from high school, friends from college, friends from her work. She was a social worker. She had a very large network of friends. And what I did was pull in the ones that were closest to her. So Lynn from high school volunteered to take her some places when we didn't want Natalie to drive anymore. She would take her shopping. Natalie loved to go to the thrift shop. So she would take her to the thrift shop. And then Paula, her best friend from college, would take her out for lunch. I had different friends from actually my cousin Marcia, who could be included in family, was a good friend of my sister. So I pulled in Marcia and she would go on hikes with Natalie. Every Wednesday afternoon, she would take her on a long walk. So pulling peers in, if peers can volunteer to take them to friends, take them to the doctor's appointments. If you have availability to that, or if that is something that's available to you, it can be a really wonderful resource to get peers involved. If the person that you're concerned about is still working, you can ask them or you can contact their work environment. Sometimes there are programs for leave, there are programs. I just want to make sure that I have in my notes to tell you. My room is so dark. I'm so sorry because there was a glare, but and I need my glasses and I want to make sure. Yes, there are resources that are available. There are some online, and you can contact their company's HR department and ask them if there are any services or resources, and you can ask them about caregiving benefits as well. So that is definitely another resource that you can tap into. There's also community resources. Because we are all in the Bay Area, we are very lucky to be in an area. If you're on a journey with somebody who you're worried about has Alzheimer's or dementia, or they have been diagnosed, I just want to tell you a quick story about my sister's neurologist. We did eventually move my sister out here, but when she was in Chicago, when she originally got diagnosed, I'll never forget, her neurologist called me after a long conversation on the phone. She called me right back. And she said, "Are you in the Bay Area? I'm looking at your area code." And I said, "Yes, why?" And she said, "I just want to let you know that you have so many wonderful resources in the Bay Area. You've got really good medical facilities, and you've got resources that are available there for help and support and to develop a care team." And she said, "You definitely should get your sister out there," which we did. So we are lucky to be in an area with so many wonderful resources available to us, because not everybody has that. Which leads us to the Alzheimer's Association. And I know that Sariana was telling me earlier that you have had other trainings from the Alzheimer's Association, but for those of you that are new today, and this might be your first one, I do want to spend some time talking about this wonderful organization, because it is such an incredible support system for you. So alz.org, you can see underneath those bullets, there's an Alzheimer Navigator, where you can find any information that you might want and connect to other people or other resources that might be helpful for you, or other people that are experiencing what you're experiencing. There's a resource finder, like I just said. All's Connected is a specific website or a specific area on the website that can connect you if you're a caregiver, or if you're somebody who is experiencing dementia or Alzheimer's, and you can chat with other people that are experiencing some similar issues that you are or that your loved one is. There's a caregiver center, there's a safety center, and most important, at least for me, initially was the 800 number, the helpline, 800-272-3900. And they're available all day, every day. You can ask any question that you feel that you need help with. And it can be about support groups. It can be about doctors. It can be about other trainings that are provided through the Alzheimer's Association. It can be about volunteering. It can be about a specific issue that you're having with the person that you're caring for. Any question that you have, if they can't answer it, they will refer you to somebody who can. And I remember so well when Natalie was first diagnosed at age 52, and all the feelings and emotions that you can imagine, you know, denial, grief, confusion, frustration. I didn't know what to do. And I called the helpline, and they really steered me to people that I could contact and talk to. And it's a wonderful resource that I highly recommend. alz.org/find us. You can hear about support groups and other programs, programs that are available in the community and actually nationwide. And then training.alz.org has information on other trainings that are provided. And it's wonderful that the San Anselmo Library is providing you with these trainings. And I just want to talk to you briefly. I don't know which other ones you've had, but there's, I'm going to mention them now. There's the 10 warning signs. There's effective communication strategies for caregivers. So if you're caring for somebody with Alzheimer's and dementia, and you want to learn how to care for them and interact with them and communicate with them more effectively and positively, that's a wonderful training. There's understanding and responding to dementia-related behaviors, which is well, they're all really wonderful. There's this one, there's one for legal and financial planning. I know we touched on it today, but there's a whole training that goes in depth about that. And then there's one of my all-time favorites, which is healthy living for your brain and body. So those of us that are here today for a parent or a sibling, we are at a much higher risk for developing cognitive decline as we age. So this training goes into the 4 areas of how to protect ourselves, which is physical health and exercise, diet, cognitive stimulation, and social engagement. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can go online and check that out through the Alzheimer's Association. All the trainings are just like this one. They're online and they're all free. Another training that we do that I think is a really important training is called Understanding Alzheimer's and Dementia. And it's an overview of all the different types of dementia in addition to Alzheimer's. And it talks about state-of-the-art strategies. It gives you an overview of what the disease is, what the disease isn't. It has video clips of experts in the field and neurologists explaining what the disease is. So that's also a really good one to attend. If you want, or if you're so inclined, you can volunteer your time. There's a myriad of ways to volunteer. You can volunteer with the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is the Alzheimer's Association's biggest fundraiser. And it happens all over the Bay Area once a year. And you can volunteer by registering people at the event. You can be a walk leader and get donations. You can donate to somebody else who's walking. You can pass out water at the event. There's numerous ways to volunteer for the walk. And also the Longest Day is another huge fundraiser where it happens at the solstice, the longest day of the year. And if you want more information about these, everything's available either online or at the helpline. You can volunteer like I'm doing. You can be a community educator and do the trainings if your skill set lends itself to that, and that's something you're interested in doing. You can volunteer to be a support group facilitator. You can volunteer at the hotline. Again, you can volunteer at the walk or at the Longest Day. There's many ways to volunteer. And you can also be an advocate. It's called the Alzheimer Impact Movement. And I know before COVID, they were going to Washington, D.C., and they were getting on buses to go to Sacramento and work with legislators to get funding to hopefully prevent the disease, get a cure and a treatment for the disease. Also, another way to get involved is through the Trial Match. It's a free service trial match can't remember the exact, it's trialmatch.com, trialmatch.org. But if you go onto the Alzheimer's Association, and if you're interested in it, just type that in. It's a free service. And if you're interested in getting involved in a clinical trial, they send you out. I get an email once every couple of weeks and it says, there's a clinical trial that you might be involved in. And you can look at it. And if it's something you're interested in, you can click on it. And then you can see if you're eligible to participate in it, if that's something that you're interested in doing. Remember, nobody can provide all the support alone. We need to form a care team, even if it's a small care team with not a lot of people. You have to have somebody in addition to yourself. Talk with family about the concerns as they arrive. So again, really important in this very, very early stage with the person that you're caring about. If they have an early diagnosis or they don't have one yet, and you're concerned about their memory, it's time to have the conversation. The sooner, the better. And it is exactly 11 o'clock, which is perfect timing because I want to make sure to get to your questions. Don't forget the helpline, 800-272-3900, or go to alz.org and ask any question that you have, and they will get answered for you. So, Sariana, I'm going to stop sharing my slides. Hi. And
I'm muted. Sorry. Hi. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation and sharing your story.
Pleasure. And I can see the chat now. So
yeah, I'm gonna stop recording. So now, so bye-bye recording people.